boondocks, cut your wood and everything, convert your car alternator in, and drive up to 110 volts and power your power tools. Anyone ever seen that? Okay, so basically a car alternator, as you see right here, when you deregulate it, becomes a pulse voltage frequency generator. Now, in my development, it wasn't necessary for me to develop a pulse voltage frequency generator. I already had one available. All I had to do was deregulate it in order to send it right on up to 110 volts or higher. Now, to show an amp restriction on the technology here, as you apply voltage to the field of the alternator here, or the pulse voltage frequency generator, this magnetic field is formed, and then it must be rotated, and that magnetic field must pass through this pickup coil in order to produce power. Now, there's no electrical connection between the armature and the pickup ring, so as a result, the only power being transmitted from the armature to the pickup is through this magnetic field. Now, if I simply will attenuate or reduce that magnetic field down to such a point that I barely allow that magnetic field to pass through this pickup coil, I will develop a voltage potential, but it will also restrict amp flow because amps would be directly related to the strength of this magnetic field, would it not? So as a result, I can use a car alternator to restrict amps and allow voltage to take over and utilize it in a controlled means. Now, once you develop and you realize a basic principle that someone else has not looked at before, once you realize that you can use high pulse frequency in the production of hydrogen gas, then you go for controllability and develop the controllability. Then you must develop the evolution of the technology. And in the development of the technology, we went to develop what was called a resonant cavity technology. Now, World War II, an example of this. In World War II, they were trying to develop the radar system to give it range in order to make it operational. The radar system technology could not be used commercially or effectively until the invention of the klystron tube. If any of you are familiar with electronics. The klystron tube was developed to take an electron and use voltage potential to accelerate the speed of the electrons and then release it at a given rate of frequency, and as a result gave range to the radar system and brought it into operational services in World War II. And that was one of the major inventions to bring about the end of World War II, was the invention of the klystron tube. The exact same phenomenon has happened with regard to the resonant cavity technology. When the water molecule splits into its component part hydrogen and oxygen, being subjected to a high pulse voltage frequency, under this type of condition, it electrically polarizes those atoms. And because those liberated atoms now have an electrical charge, you can now manipulate the speed by which those liberated charged atoms can now move within this resonant cavity. And as a result of this, we are now injecting a physical force into the electrical polarization process by causing a high pulse voltage frequency, causing these electrically charged atoms now to be bounced back and forth in the process, and this starts releasing a phenomenal amount of gas under given frequencies. This shows a spherical design resonant cavity here, and this shows a longitudinal type of resonant cavity. The correlation between this is like that of a laser. If I have a laser here with two silver mirrors and I would start to excite the laser, you bounce back and forth the photon energy before you release it out. The same thing occurs with the resonant cavity technology. This shows some of the advanced circuitry that had to be developed in the evolution and development of the water fuel cell technology. This shows a electronic cage of a lot of the electronic components in the testing and development of the system. This shows a much higher form of evolution of its development of the water fuel cell technology. Shows how we manipulate the pulse voltage frequency while restricting the amps. And as a result of this, we found some phenomena that were taking place that heretofore in the prior state of the art couldn't occur. An electrolysis process, because it would add chemicals to the process,